Isshiki Ōtsutsuki. Isshiki Ōtsutsuki, Ōtsutsuki Isshiki, was a member of the Ōtsutsuki clan's main family and the leader of Kara. 1,000 years ago, Isshiki came to Earth alongside Kaguya with the objective to plant a tree to harvest its chakra fruit. While Kaguya, being lower ranked, was planned to be sacrificed to create the chakra fruit, she instead turned on Isshiki, leaving him on the verge of death after destroying Ishiki's lower half. Encountering Jigen and not having the strength to implant a kama on him, Isshiki devised a desperate plan and shrunk himself to enter the monk's ear in order to survive his injury by absorbing Jigen's nutrients. Through time, Isshiki came to control Jigen's entire body and embed a kama onto his host. Upon the formation of Kara, Isshiki through Jigen became its leader and acquired a new ten-tail seedling. The inners collectively agreed on obtaining the chakra fruit by cultivating a new god tree huge enough to devour all life on Earth. With Kaguya's betrayal and eventual sealing leaving Isshiki alone, he was left with no other option but to use himself via Jigen as the sacrifice for the ten-tails, in order to make it bloom into a god tree. Passing on reviving himself through Jigen as his body would die within a few days as it wouldn't bear his chakra, he instead opted to cultivate Jigen's body as much into an Ōtsutsuki as possible to be fed to the ten-tails for its growth. With this intent, Isshiki began preparing for a new vessel to embed another kama seal once he fed Jigen and himself to the beast. Eventually, Isshiki found Kawaki, after Delta tested the boy's blood as a viable candidate to be a vessel in the anime. Jigen approached Kawaki's abusive father with a large sum of money, to buy the boy for his plans. After taking custody of the boy, Isshiki introduced Jigen as his new father and reassured him. With the assistance of Amato, who at some point modified Ishiki's vessel with scientific ninja tools, the two attempted to transfer Kama to Kawaki, Code, and 13 other boys in an experiment. Kawaki was the only success, while Code gained an incomplete white kama and the other 13 perished. Despite promising him safety, Isshiki put Kawaki through grueling training to master the kama and would constantly berate him as only having value as a vessel, striking the boy whenever he questioned him. Meanwhile, Code was recruited as his most loyal subordinate. At some point, Amato presented to him several cyborgs he had modified to secretly bring down Jigen, under the pretenses of being useful for the sake of Kara's plans. However, as their combat abilities exceeded Jigen's, he ordered Amato to dispose of them to not undermine his position as leader and ordered Burrow to get rid of them, not knowing that Burrow had actually hidden them all in his cult. Personality. Isshiki was driven, pragmatic, and remorseless. Common with the rest of his clan, Isshiki cared not for other lives, desiring only to live at any costs and furthering his own goals with no concern on how many innocent people must die for it, as shown when he crushed Jigen's mind and completely took over his brain and body. Even fellow clansmen were not above being expendable by him, as he intended to sacrifice Momoshiki's vessel to cultivate a god tree. Even as he overwhelmed Jigen's body with his immense power, he mocked Jigen's tears of pain, declaring him a worthless and defective vessel. Like other Ōtsutsuki, he openly viewed himself as a superior being, looking down on all others as beneath him. In battle, he outright mocked enemies, repeatedly insulting his foes upon overpowering them and relishing in their awe and/or fear of his power. He also showed an authoritarian nature, fully capable of commanding respect among the group, to the point even the prideful Victor and hot-tempered Delta were easily silenced by him. He was also shown to be rather vain, storing various trinkets in his pocket dimension, including clothing and glasses of wine. In the anime, he noted to find certain people amusing, such as Deepa making him laugh on occasion, though he seems to not express such emotions openly, as Amato did not think he was capable of laughter. He was very confident in his abilities, bordering on arrogance. When he faced Naruto and Sasuke, the well-considered two strongest shinobi in history, he was completely unfazed by this. At the same time, this self-confidence didn't prevent Isshiki from praising his opponents and also remaining calm when cornered, even actually thanking them for revealing the weakness of his abilities. Likewise, he was willing to admit when he was outwitted, openly declaring Amato's victory in forcing his resurrection in Jigen's body. He was also shown to be a perfectionist, expressing disgust to see his adopted son's preference of his prosthetic right arm over and desire to quickly restore his right arm. However, he could only be worried that his future body would be imperfect. Despite his confidence, he was cautious, having ordered Amato to dispose of all the cyborgs that surpassed Jigen's powers to prevent usurpation of leadership, leaving only Code as an exception due to his loyalty, but not without installing limiters in him. Isshiki was a hypocrite and an abusive parental figure, as when he took in Kawaki as an adopted son and promised him safety, he placed the child, alongside 14 others, in a dangerous experiment that led to 13 of them dying outright. His methods of training Kawaki in becoming his vessel, along with discipline for disobedience, amounted to constant physical abuse and neglect, beating the child while refusing to explain to him of the true purpose of the seal he placed onto him. Isshiki's horrible parenting greatly warped Kawaki's personality with violent tendencies and trauma. Despite his immoral nature, Isshiki was shown to be able to remain calm even when faced with insult. Generally, Isshiki was formal and courteous, addressing the fellow members of his organization politely, even extending manners to his enemies, as apologized for not removing his shoes when entering the Uzumaki household. He preferred to only incapacitate enemies when not needing to kill them and even willing to avoid conflict if potential adversaries were agreeable to his terms. At the same time, like Momoshiki, Isshiki's confidence stems from an extreme superiority complex. As such, when faced against the prospect of an opponent who can actually challenge him, he becomes furious and determined to restore his self-perceived dominance. He seemed to have a sense of camaraderie, referring to the other inners as comrades and offering to tell Koji's last words to Amato as a favor to his former comrades. He was very composed and systematic in his approach to matters at hand. Even when dealing with momentary failure, he remains determined as ever, convinced that all will fall into place as he designed it. At the same time, he had shown an irritable side, as when tasks failed to reach his expectations, he could lash out, as he kicked a broken tank after another setback to his plans. Prioritizing his own survival more than almost anything, Isshiki lost his composure when Naruto drained him of his already limited lifespan, showing his fear of a permanent death and his rage at Naruto's mockery. He made it clear that Kawaki will not amount to anything but as a sacrifice for Ishiki's own survival, and upon being outsmarted by Kawaki, a dying Isshiki, losing all composure, expressed pure horror at his own death. Also, despite his vain attitude, he could genuinely appreciate those who are faithful to him, as he regarded Code as his most beloved, loyal subordinate, naming him his successor to the Ōtsutsuki will. He viewed those who value peace as the utmost priority as being cowardly and foolish. Arrogant as he appeared, Isshiki was very cautious and secretive, capable of keeping the full scope of his abilities secret even from his allies. Very perceptive and deceptive, he was fully aware of Koji Kashin and Amato's treason, yet still hid it perfectly from all. He effectively fooled all the inners so well that he ultimately tricked Koji and Amato to reveal their true intentions of killing him. Even though Victor went to falsify evidence to blame Deepa of his unauthorized project to recreate a god tree, Isshiki did not trust any of it, and while putting Victor off guard by seemingly letting him off with a warning, instead revived Deepa's head to confirm the truth and ordered Victor's execution. Isshiki was so driven in his goals that he could get overexcited and reckless from the idea of things proceeding so swiftly. Delta noted that money Isshiki had invested for his experiments was enough to buy an entire country. His immense devotion to his goal left him to have little to no interest in other matters, willing to leave his defeated foes alive if he deemed it taking up too much of his time. Isshiki's devotion in cultivating the chakra fruit was such even while alone after losing Kagaya, he was willing to feed his own damaged body via his inadequate vessel to the Ten-Tails, even if this would result in the fruit's inferior quality. Even more, the fact that he would wait for over a millennium shows remarkable tenacity and patience on his part. At the same time, he would do whatever he deemed necessary to speed up progress in his plans. After learning of Boruto bearing a kama and uniquely having a naturally perfect compatibility with it, he became determined to capture Boruto as a new sacrifice for the god tree and to ensure he would not die in any way outside of being fed to the beast, in order to produce the highest caliber of chakra fruit. Even after death, he was determined to continue his clan's way of evolving by tasking his most loyal and trusted subordinate Code to follow in his footsteps and become an Ōtsutsuki by planting a new god tree on Earth and consume a chakra fruit, and then to continue to do so across more planets. He was also vengeful, naming all those who led to his death for Code to kill. Isshiki seemed to believe that all living beings have their fates predestined by their genetics, as he stated that Koji, a clone of Jiraiya, was destined to die just like his template due to having inherited his genes. Appearance. Isshiki bore the telltale features of the Ōtsutsuki clan, including pale skin, and a long, curving horn which grew from his left brow and wrapped around the back of his skull before jutting outward from his right temple, resembling a crown. The iris and pupil of his right eye were yellow with a black wheel-like pattern with 8 spokes coming out of the center, while his left eye was a Byakugan. He bore matching tattoos on his chest and back. On his chest was a vertical column of 6 magatama or tomo topped with an emblem resembling a black mallet across his chest, and on his back was a vertical column of 6 smaller black mallet emblems. His hair, right eyebrow, and goatee were pale blue trimmed short with unusual alternating zigzag patterns resembling the hair parts worn by other members of his clan, while his fingernails and toenails were painted a deep black. Isshiki preferred to dress in an elegant, slim-cut, white long-sleeved tailcoat with maroon lining and cuffs and an oversized collar that folded back upon itself over his bare muscular torso, over a pair of baggy black pants that often covered his bare feet. The coat was embroidered with patterns matching his tattoos, with vertical columns comprised of 8 magatama designs on the sleeves, and a similar pattern on the back, with the second magatama replaced with the black mallet emblem. Abilities. Isshiki's power was so vast that Jigen's body, despite the various enhancements he gained to be monstrously powerful in his own right, had difficulty containing it, preventing him from using the full extent of it for long. While limited, he could pressure both Naruto Uzumaki and Sasuke Uchiha, the two strongest shinobi in history simultaneously, and upon exerting himself more, decisively defeat both of them, sealing the former while nearly killing the latter. Amato described Ishiki's power as being so immense that if he were to be able to fully harness his true powers, he could destroy Earth with no one able to stop him. Chakra and physical prowess. Isshiki was a very resilient man, able to survive being bisected long enough to find a new host. While possessing Jigen, Isshiki displayed incredible prowess in unarmed combat. Even without having Jigen's body access more of his power, he shows tremendous speed and strength, easily kicking Naruto away, impressing the Hokage with his reaction, and effortlessly catching a punch from Kawaki when he had Kama activated, causing Kawaki visible pain by merely lightly twisting his arm. He was also highly durable, suffering no injuries from a direct kick from Naruto in his Six Paths Sage mode. Even while severely weakened from his battle with Naruto and Sasuke, he remained fully capable of matching Koji Kashin in hand-to-hand combat. Isshiki also had considerable senses, as he was easily able to sense the presence of Koji's toad that went unnoticed even to Naruto. In his true form, Ishiki's strength and speed were at such levels that he was able to completely outmatch Naruto in his Six Paths Sage mode, kicking him through buildings without the Hokage being able to react, casually toying with him during their battle before finishing him off, and was able to attack Sasuke, with his Sharingan being unable to track him fast enough. Isshiki wielded tremendously powerful chakra, compared to Naruto in his Six Paths Sage mode formed by Kawaki. Its sheer reserves and strength at full power was capable of overwhelming Jigen's body with the sheer intensity of it. Even while limiting himself, his sinister chakra was already strong enough to terrify Ino Yamanaka to the point of near collapse. When unleashing more of his power through Jigen's Kama, his chakra was such that it intimidated Sasuke into fleeing and later on unnerved both him and Naruto. As noted by Amato and Isshiki himself, his chakra was so massive that it required a proper vessel to withstand it, as if he were to be reborn in Jigen's body, the man's body would die within a few days. Isshiki believed 3 days would be the limit. Ninjutsu. Like the other members of his clan, Isshiki could fly at high speed. Utilizing In release, he could communicate with others using Genjutsu. He had shown considerable Bojutsu prowess, being able to easily counter the masterful swordsmanship of Sasuke. He could use space-time ninjutsu, able to access what appears to be his personal dimension, a world with rolling purple storm clouds and desiccated white land. The crater-shaped battlefield was also a gigantic coffin, with its lid suspended above the clouds. He could also use the massive construct to perform a powerful Fuinjutsu, able to seal away even the likes of Naruto. Only Isshiki himself was capable of breaking the seal, and cracking it would only destroy whatever is inside. In the anime, he could also produce powerful fire blasts from his hands. Kama. As an Ōtsutsuki, Isshiki could impart a Kama onto individuals. This seal, being a compressed backup file of Ishiki's biological data, grants the host his powers and techniques, including a huge boost in physical abilities and chakra levels, as well as the ability to absorb chakra. While using a vessel with its enhanced Kama, Isshiki displayed such a tremendous level of physical strength and speed that he was able to effortlessly dodge Sasuke's complete body Susanoo and Naruto's tailed beast mode attacks and plunge them out with a single attack, as well as pummel them severely with just a few punches and kicks. He was also resilient enough to be completely unfazed while being burned by Amaterasu, which could harm even tailed beasts, proceeding to calmly absorb it. He could also connect space between two targets bearing his mark to instantly teleport to the other target. The true purpose of Kama was for Ishiki's genetic information to overwrite that of the host, allowing him to transcend death and be reborn at the expense of the vessel's individuality. Isshiki applied the Kama onto Jigen after nearly dying from Kagaya's attack, but knowing Jigen's body would die days later after resurrecting through him, Isshiki used the Kama instead to better control Jigen's body as a vessel. Nevertheless, Jigen's would endure great damage if accessing too much of Ishiki's power for prolonged periods of time. Through scientific aid, Isshiki was able to transfer his Kama to a more suitable vessel, albeit with a very low success rate, with Kawaki alone out of 15 children to have survived the process. At the same time, Isshiki would still have to nurture Kawaki's through arduous training to ensure he could resurrect in his body. As with any Kama, Isshiki had no control over its progress once it is applied. Hence, when he and Jigen were burned to death by Koji, Isshiki was forced to reincarnate into an incomplete state using Jigen's charred corpse. At the moment of reincarnation, every other Kama that Isshiki placed vanished, thus preventing Isshiki from stockpiling on backup vessels for further reincarnation, leaving him vulnerable to a permanent death unless he could apply another Kama. Having left a white Kama on code, Ishiki's spirit was able to temporarily manifest via it to speak his final words to his failed vessel before disappearing. Dojitsu. With his unique right eye, Isshiki was able to view the life force of living things, including his own, in the form of fire-like shadows and perform Sukuna Hikona, a technique that allowed him to instantly shrink himself or anything non-living target he saw and just as quickly restore its original size. After shrinking a target, he could use Dekokuden, which let him store any of his shrunken targets into a pocket timeless dimension, which he could summon at full size at any given time. He tended to make regular usage of this, manifesting replacements of destroyed furnishings and other items, like a table, food and drink, and even lit candles. Isshiki could manifest these objects anywhere among his surroundings as well as freely manipulate them once brought forth. He could use these abilities in combat to great effect by shrinking weapons and objects and then summoning them to full size right onto his opponents, causing severe damage by surprise, or by reducing the size of elemental attacks and projectile weapons to prevent them from harming him. He could even reduce the size of buildings to cause severe collateral damage and remove stable footing from his enemies. Having the ability to produce and summon a myriad of special black rods, his most common tactic with them were to instantly summon black rods at various sizes and in great quantities to impale his foes with tremendous force, enough to pierce Naruto's chakra shroud. Sending in a barrage of those rods was enough to destroy small cliffs. Ishiki's rods were durable enough to evenly clash with Naruto's Rasengan. The rods were noted for having the ability to drain the chakra from anyone pierced by them. Varying in size, the rods could rival the size of a tailed beast and Susanoo. He could also manifest massive black cubes which disrupt sensory abilities. As an Ōtsutsuki, Isshiki possessed a Byakugan, but apparently only in his left eye and couldn't access it when in a vessel. It granted him the usual near 360-degree field of X-ray vision, with the presumed exception of a small blind spot at the upper thoracic vertebrae, and the ability to see the chakra pathway system, though there are special barriers that he could not see through, such as an underground facility within Konoha that was made with such arrangements, and Sasuke's mineral-based smoke bomb. Intelligence. Unlike other members of his clan, who had little to no knowledge about shinobi and their abilities due to being largely unaware of their existence, Isshiki possessed vast knowledge about the history and potential of shinobi and humankind altogether due to having lived on Earth for 1,000 years. Having centuries of experience and knowledge, Isshiki openly shared his knowledge about his opponent's abilities and attacks, even mid-battle, both in an attempt to demoralize them by noting their flaws before effortlessly countering them, as well as due to his arrogance of believing that nobody could surpass him. Isshiki was also aware of the full concept of tailed beasts, and their abilities, as well as the Susanoo, noting that while having great defense, which Isshiki was nonetheless able to effortlessly break through, it possessed little speed, which he used to his advantage. Despite his arrogance, Isshiki was not above studying and learning about his opponents and possible threats, as he was fully aware of the reputation of Naruto Uzumaki, Sasuke Uchiha, and even the deceased Jiraiya, whose clone Amato deployed against him. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.